I cramped up there, by the way. So thanks to all of you for coming out. Let's get this going, because I got to say, there's not an issue that I can sit down next to a stranger, where I live in Americas County, in Thurston County, and connect on this issue more than what do we call in the big picture? Gender reassignment, or the gender mafia? What do we call it? The disconnect between the parents of the students and the administration or the state is the greatest I've ever seen, and I came from California. Nate Nehring from Snohomish County Council. Can you talk about it's a state law now, but how does this happen in Snohomish County? I used to live in Monroe, and now I live in Yelm, and I'm here to tell you this is such a disconnect.
Well, our test scores are doing so well, we got to start focusing on other things in schools, right? Here's the thing. I went to public schools. I taught in public schools before being on the county council. And I'll tell you, if you take a look at our test scores in math, reading, writing, science, and you compare it to other countries, it's abysmal, especially with the amount of money that we're putting into education in this country and the lack of product we're seeing out of the school system. I think it just adds to the frustration of what we're seeing now with the gender ideology, the other neo-Marxist movements that we're seeing in some of these public schools, not just in Washington State, but throughout the country. And so I think it's good that we've seen parents rise up throughout Snohomish County, throughout Washington State. I think we need to see more of it, see more pushback, because we've got to send a message that this is totally unacceptable, what's happening in our schools.
And where I live, the direct line from the state capitol to local administration is unbroken. Now, I can't speak for Asotin or Walla Walla. I have no idea, how that works. But it's almost like it snuck up on parents. And I have a sophomore in high school, and on the one hand, it's sort of a cultural thing that some kids are just trying to find another way to piss off their parents. On the other hand, the second they do that, they're enabled, and they have a quiver of arrows handed to them by state law. And I have no idea where it came from. I've never seen something subvert parental authority so quickly. And so, Professor Stuart Reges from the UW, am I right? Did this come directly from higher education down to secondary education?
I think that's right. It's about 6 years ago now that we started having diversity, equity, and inclusion, which sounded like good things. But when you looked into it, what you found out is it was this ideology that thinks that America is hopelessly corrupt. Everything must be changed. We need to dismantle the patriarchy. We need to have a racial reckoning. We need to do anti-racism, and of course all of the gender ideology as well. That we now ask for pronouns at the University of Washington, and the faculty are supposed to respect the pronouns of various students. There's an anger from a lot of these activists. We had a table that was, Turning Point USA had some literature out on a table, and someone came along and flipped the table, so angry at these people for having conservative documents, being passed out to students.
Yeah, that's what I get, is that it's a completely hostile environment. In my daughter's high school, there are girls that wear baggy pants, and they're pulled aside and they're told that they're actually crypto boys or whatever, and they'll tell the administration, but I'm not. I'm wearing my brother's pants. And I asked my daughter, is there one boy in your high school who dresses like a girl and comes into the girls' locker room with the last turkey in the shop and the whole thing, or what? She said, no, there's not, but there are feminine boys that are being pulled aside to special counseling and things. And I don't know how the state works, but is there a budget? Are these people being paid specifically for a thing? Cyndy from the 25th District in Puyallup, is there now a job position in our schools for someone to keep an eye out for the transgenders?
Yeah, and I believe it was Senate Bill 5599 that we passed last time, and in the context of that, I think there was $7.5 million worth of funding for this, and this was, if someone is seeking gender-affirming care or reproductive care, then parents don't have to be notified about where they are, whether they're at a host home or whatever. And so in the context of that, we also passed some rules, and we have Rule 3211, Policy 3211, and as far as I know, it's in all the school districts in the state. And in Policy 3211, Your parents, teachers are not allowed to notify parents about their child's gender status.
More than any single thing about it, that's the part that pisses parents off the most. I mean, I know that amongst my daughter's friends, that's the thing that sets people out. The idea that a complete stranger is giving medical advice to your child,
right, and
without your consent.
And there is supposed to be a gender person, an assigned person on each campus that is in charge of making sure that all these rules are implemented and all this training is implemented. And it's kind of a perfect storm. We have the Senate bill where children can be hidden from parents if they are seeking these types of services. We have, in some cases, we have clinics in the schools, and then we have a policy which says we will not condone if teachers tell parents, because they equate it with abuse. Because I was even told by our superintendent, look, when a parent doesn't know about this and we're not telling the parents about this, this can be dangerous. We look for abuse. So just because a parent is not supporting a child in their decision to be transgender does not mean that that's abusive. We should have other standards for abuse.
There's a real law against that, isn't it?
Right, right.
Because the funniest thing, my daughter's an autodidact. I can just point her to a subject, she'll study it. What's really funny is Scandinavia now, a decade after letting 14-year-olds mutilate themselves, now has 24-year-olds saying, "Why'd you let me mutilate myself?" in Swedish.
And they've banned it. They've banned it for children now.
And they're saying, "Don't mutilate your kids." And you know, my daughter's finally understood. You don't make piercing tattoo decisions when you're 14. But I mean, where did this? Professor Reges, obviously this has unwavering support on campuses. Does anyone have any idea where babies come from or who's in charge of the baby?
That's a good question. Well, I wouldn't say that there's this incredible support on campus. What I see are a small group of activists who have a very radical agenda, including things involved with the gender issue. And they've just kind of taken control of key positions. We now have 100 paid staff at the University of Washington whose job involves diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's $15 million a year. You could give $500 to every undergraduate at the University of Washington for the cost of what they're doing. But another thing that's really key to what they do is they say, well, if you disagree with me, you're not just wrong, you are immoral. You are a transphobe, a racist, a sexist.
Yeah.
And they want you fired. They want you to be silenced at least. So there's a lot of pressure on campus. People don't feel comfortable speaking up about what they really think.
And so Snohomish County Councilman Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, is it any different up in Snohomish County? I'm assuming that parents trade these stories with each other and say, can you even believe that I don't have the right to know where my 14-year-old is right now because there's post-school counseling?
Absolutely. I'm shocked to hear some of the stories that are coming out. And I think, we talked about it earlier, but there's this insidious ideology in schools, and it's in K-12, it's in higher education, that the student belongs to the collective, right? To society or to the school. Well, here's the thing. Parents are the primary educators of children. And that's regardless of whether you choose to put your children in public school, in private school, or homeschool them. You're still the primary educator no matter what. And the sooner that our schools and that our society as a whole starts to realize that and give parents the respect that they're due, the sooner we can move on and move to a better spot, I think. But it's ridiculous what's happening here with the type of control that schools are trying to take.
Yeah, and I think speaking for a lot of parents out here, probably there's sort of an attitude of who the hell cares where it came from? It's here now. And nobody has the right to counsel my kid that they're right-handed if they're left-handed or they're a Scorpio. So what do we do now? Because if I have sole physical and legal custody of my minor child, and I lawyered up, and I was told that they can fight it because it's a state law. I mean, what do we do? I mean, besides elect Republicans?
Well, I tell you what we do is we start talking about this because those cross-sex hormones are very harmful. And I just think that we need to start talking about this issue in love. And we need to be kind to everybody, but we need to make sure that we talk about the harms of this. And the other thing that we do, and I've been out this week, I didn't know what else to do, but we've got some good school board candidates in Puyallup, and I was out, with my husband putting flyers on doors and knocking on doors, because there are a lot of people who agree with us.
That grassroots level of democracy really has taken a front and center with a lot of rural communities, like where I am in Eatonville. The New York Times came and did a story about how the 2%ers took over.
Yeah, and
because people just got PO'd about the direction of the schools.
And you can't unsee this. And
Yeah.
I'm almost sorry that I saw as much as I did, because now I can't shut up. But I'm just, I'm appalled, and you cannot unsee this. And so that's why I was out all last week, putting flyers on doors for candidates who are sensible, not candidates who are banning books, not candidates who are members of a hate group, which is what they're called, but candidates who are sensible and want to return to parents what they need, which is transparency in what's happening with their children in the schools. Sensible candidates.
And I mean, surely people in Eastern Washington are not saying, boy, thank God my son can become my daughter now. I mean, how is this playing there?
Well, I don't know, they got Rule 3211.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, Professor Reges, if you have any people on the inside at Eastern or Wazoo or whatever, but are campuses across the state sort of in the same condition of a loud elite complaining grievance left and right if you don't agree with their agenda?
I think it's a little less bad in the eastern part of the state, but it's pretty bad everywhere. This ideology has captured campuses all across the country.
Well, so in the legislature, is this something that by measure of the people we can do something about this, right?
I hope so. There's no easier way to clear a room than to start talking about your bill on this subject.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk about it.
What would such an initiative look like? This here to before repeal any and all. I mean, what would I want to write it.
I think it would look like an issue where we were trying to be more transparent to parents and sort of a parents' bill of rights type of thing. So
Nate, what can Snohomish County do? Sue the state? Maybe?
I'm not sure. That's something we could look at. No, I think one of the things that we need to see, and we're seeing it across the country, which is encouraging, is grassroots movements of parents going to school board meetings, making their concerns known. And Cyndy brought up a great point. We do that, and automatically, what does the left say? The far left progressives say, well, you're domestic terrorists, you're members of a hate group, because we're speaking out trying to defend our kids. So it's insane. But I think the grassroots effort is working. I know we've seen in Snohomish County, I think throughout Washington State, records of, or a record number of kids who are being taken out of public schools and put into either homeschool, private school, other options. And that has a hit, right? That has a direct effect on the funding that's going toward these schools. And so I think, the school system, the public education system belongs to the taxpayer. It belongs to the public. And so when it's not serving our interests, when it's not serving our children's interests, we each as individuals have ways to push back on that by who we elect to school boards, by where we decide to send our kids to school. And so, unfortunate things happen at the state level with the composition of the legislature right now. But we as individuals and as communities can do our part to push back on this. And I've seen it happening across the country, which is encouraging. We need to continue to do it.
And I absolutely. I got to say that this is an issue that parents are fairly articulate about it because we're living it. What blows me away is that there's people, maybe they're empty nesters or whatever, they're unaware of what's happened. And so I think it's incumbent on all of you to bone up on the issue. But I got to say, I'll go get signatures or whatever, because I've never seen something so subversive so quickly overcome. I mean, it was nasty down in Southern California. It was one of the reasons we left. But to come here and find out that your kid can mutilate themselves based on some myth that somewhere there's a tree where transgender kids are hanging themselves or something.
Can I mention a couple of things?
Absolutely.
So it can be very frustrating to be on campus and to feel like I express conservative ideas and people are like, what, are you, a Martian or something? There aren't any conservatives here. We all agreed long ago on these other principles. So I was just going to say that meetings like this are really great for someone like myself to remind me that there are other people in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other points of view. So just all of you speaking up and making it clear that you don't agree with this ideology and so forth, or that's very, very important for people like myself, so that we don't get driven from the university. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm suing the university. So I figured out a way to trap them. I kind of laid a trap for them that they took me up on, and now I have a great free speech case against them. But court cases take a long time, but we're optimistic that we're going to get some of these policies stricken from the University of Washington.
All right, well, thank you all. That's all the time we have. God's County Councilman Nate Nehring, you to Professor Stuart Reges, go Cougs, and 25th District Councilperson from Puyallup, Cyndy Jacobsen. Yeah, this is not going anywhere, and parents are getting cumulatively more angry. So anyway, thank you all for coming here.